I went and saw Justice League the day it came out here in Australia. I decided to give it some time before I reacted to it, before I gave my full impressions, a review if you will, and I will be talking about spoilers in this video despite the fact that most people probably haven't seen the film, in which case I would encourage you to go see the film or at least wait until it comes out on DVD or something in order to see this film before watching this video. However, if you haven't seen the film and you're interested to see what direction the DC films are going in the future, I'll have a timestamp linked at the top of the description maybe to when I'm talking about that. So far for the critics, the Justice League film is not going very well, which is surprising to me because the critics got everything they asked for in Batman vs. Superman. When Batman vs. Superman happened, a lot of people complained. They said it was too dark, too eerie, and way too serious, and now it seems the complaints are literally the opposite of that. Which again is quite strange to me because I'm just not quite sure what they're supposed to do. It's weird because the product we're watching with Justice League is not what we're actually going to get in the future. What we thought we were going to get when we went into this movie was a Steppenwolf film, essentially. Like Steppenwolf would be the villain, and then the next villain would be Darkseid. And they would just kind of continue along that path. But it seems we're going in a completely different direction because now there's a lot of behind the scenes changes at Warner Brothers. So this version of Justice League hasn't gone through those changes yet. So we're seeing some shades of what used to be of the DCEU and not enough of what it will become. Although we did see some of what it will become in the case of Aquaman and the Flash, and Cyborg even. But the overall storytelling wasn't what it's going to be, which I still thought was a good result, but not necessarily what people were looking for. It is worth noting that despite the fact that the Rotten Tomatoes score for this film is only 40%, and I say only 40%, that's an okay-ish rating if you're being generous, but the audience score is 86. That's pretty solid. I would say that the Justice League film is certainly enjoyable. So the movie starts off with Batman assembling the team. We're supposed to assume this is probably because of the Parademon and also because of the previous visions he had thanks to the Flash. He goes around assembling the team, and I thought all of the interactions for assembling the team were really cool. With Aquaman, a lot of people are unsatisfied with Aquaman. Well, not a lot of people, but there are some people who are unsatisfied with Aquaman in this film. And the reason for that is because he seems kind of different in some scenes than he is in others. So for example, when they are recruiting Aquaman, he's very Arthur Curry, if that makes any sense, where much later on in the film, he's a more comedic character, which I think is fine, but that transition could have been displayed better. He was very serious when he first met Bruce Wayne, but later on in the film, he was the complete opposite of that, which I think both of those can work, but the transition between them needs to be more obvious and it needs to have a reason behind it. It did have a reason behind it, but it just wasn't portrayed very well in the movie. So I think the reason why we saw a very combative, a very serious version of Arthur Curry in the beginning of the movie is because Aquaman just didn't know Bruce Wayne very well and wasn't willing to work with him. So the version that we saw later on in the movie, the more comedic version of the character, I would imagine that's the character we can expect to see moving forward, but we'll still see shades of that serious Aquaman we saw in the beginning of the film. I thought Cyborg was also done quite well. Having Cyborg show up by the lake as Wonder Woman and Batman were talking, and also a cute little interaction where Wonder Woman even let Cyborg know that, hey, I knew you were by the lake. These little character moments are awesome to me because it shows that Wonder Woman is always on her toes, she's always paying attention, and she's always quite aware of her surroundings. It also tells you a lot about Cyborg's character, that he's able to do all of that surveillance, even if you know nothing about him. Barry Allen's character development in this film was also done quite well. The fact that he was so willing to join the team probably tells you a lot about his personality, and I can't wait to see how they continue this story, the constant struggle of his father being in prison. But as far as his actual recruiting to the team, I thought it was pulled off very well. Not much to say here because it was very obvious what they were going to do. They were going to have Barry Allen be Barry Allen and have him freak out because he's Barry Allen. I want to bring up Lois Lane's character in this film. So this is obviously a massive part where spoilers are going to come into. You probably could have watched this entire video so far and not ran into too big of spoilers anyway, but now here really does come the spoilers. Unfortunately, 50 minutes of this film was cut, or something along those lines. I could be totally wrong about that, but a large portion of this movie was cut because you have to have a reasonable viewing time for audiences. The reason I brought up the deleted scenes here is because I feel like there was something missing that was probably on the unfinished version of the film. I would have loved to have seen the scenes where Lois was originally told by Batman, hey, we might be able to bring back Superman, because obviously that interaction would have needed to happen in order for Batman to quote-unquote bring in the big gun, as he referred to Lois. As far as Superman coming back in general, I thought it was handled very well. I also loved the fight scene between him and the Justice League. The fact that he was able to handle them fairly easily. Granted, we're seeing pretty young versions of these characters, right? Arthur Curry is not even King of Atlantis yet. Cyborg just got his powers. Wonder Woman hasn't even been training this whole time. She hasn't been doing anything. She's just been living a normal life. Barry Allen seems to have just gotten his powers, and Bruce Wayne is Bruce Wayne, and he also wasn't involved in the fight until it became a one-on-one, which is obviously quite unfavorable for him. But as Batman is, he was always prepared, and he brought in the big gun. Like I said, I would have loved to have seen that interaction with Lois and him before they went into that scene, but unfortunately it was not in the final version of the film, and I certainly hope it's in some type of uncut version we see later. Quickly to address Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf is by far not a great villain, but I don't think anyone was expecting him to be a great villain. The entire idea of Steppenwolf is to be a stepping stone for the Justice League. We don't want to see a Steppenwolf film. We don't want to see him go through some type of internal struggle or talk about Darkseid for half an hour. We want to see him be powerful and then be officially dominated by the Justice League. And we saw that happen, and I'm glad that they pre-established how powerful he was by showing the original fight with Steppenwolf. The fact that it took Zeus, it took Green Lanterns, it took Amazonians, it took Atlanteans, it took all of that to take him down. And to put that in perspective, it only took 5 members of the Justice League to take him down. There's a few more scenes I want to address, starting with the Hall of Justice. I thought this was an amazing way to end the movie. Setting up for the Justice League's base of operations was a fantastic idea. Batman referencing the Round Table, and of course Wonder Woman saying that we should probably get more than 6 chairs, because at some point we might need room for more. Oh, I love that. That was so good. There are obviously plenty of more members of the Justice League which could show up in the future, and I'm really excited to see how they expand upon this. Obviously we still need Green Lantern, and maybe even Martian Manhunter. I love that they're really doing world building with these movies. For example, we haven't heard the Justice League referred to as the Justice League yet. We haven't heard Wonder Woman referred to as Wonder Woman yet. We've heard Aquaman referred to as Aquaman. We've heard the Flash referred to as the Flash, I think. Oh my god, I could be totally wrong about that. But I think we have heard him referred to as the Flash. And I think that kind of really illustrates what I'm talking about when I say world building. They don't seem to be in a rush to call Wonder Woman Wonder Woman. They don't seem to be in a rush to call Justice League Justice League. Eventually they'll get to the point where they can do that, and I can't wait for that to happen. Before I move on to the post-credit scenes, I do want to go back to that Green Lantern comment just one more time. I love that they brought in the Green Lanterns for this film. Whilst doing a kind of a teaser for it rather than actually doing the character, I thought it was really good because it showed us that, hey, we're aware that the Green Lantern Corps exists and that we will get to it eventually. By the way, here are these characters in history. We're not ignoring it. It exists, but they're not here yet. And I love that. I was there in the theater with my dad at the time, and he heard me react to that. I was like, whoa, what? They're actually just showing Green Lantern, like, right now. Like, why did they do that? Because I actually would have preferred them to hide it for a little bit, but I like them addressing it now that I've given it more thought. So let's talk about the 2 post-credit scenes. I don't like them leaving the result of the Superman versus Flash race up to interpretation. I really just don't like that. I thought it was cute that they did the scene. I've always really liked that dynamic between the 2 fastest members of the team, kind of trying to see who's faster. I loved it when they did it on Supergirl, and I'm going to love it if they do it again in Supergirl. And I freaked out when I saw that initial post-credit scene. But again, showing that result I think would have been a little bit better. Obviously, we all know who would win, but like, still, there's people out there, there's casuals who don't know, and I want them to know. I don't want anyone out there to think that Superman is faster than the Flash. That's just unacceptable. And finally, the big setup for the next film, which can be interpreted as so many different groups, but I'm gonna go ahead and call it Legion of Doom for now, before someone can tell me it's something else. So far I've heard so many theories. It's, Legion of Doom, the Society, the Injustice League. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we label it, it's going to be a group of villains, starting with Lex Luthor and Deathstroke. I'm excited about this, man. I think this is gonna be a much better direction to take the future films. I really actually like Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. I know a lot of people don't because they saw Batman vs Superman and they didn't like that version of the character, and I can understand that, but that character has time to evolve into something better. And I can see what Jesse Eisenberg's trying to do with the character, and whilst I know he's not quite there yet, I can imagine what he is imagining, and I know he can get to that point, and I believe in him. So I wouldn't give up on that character just yet. I certainly think that he's going to get there. There are plenty of more members who could show up on this roster of, Injustice members or Legion of Doom members or whatever you want to call it. I think Grodd is actually a fairly reasonable candidate. Grodd was even slightly referenced in this movie, which I thought was a nice touch. Ocean Master could be a member. Cheetah could be a member. I can't think of any good cyborg villains to throw in there. Grid. I suppose Grid could be a member. Probably not. Grid's probably a bad idea. But of course, Joker or Harley Quinn or even both could be there. You have so many different options to pull from the DC world. It's hard for me to watch a movie like Justice League, notice its blemishes, notice what's bad about it, and still not be excited about the future of the DCEU, because there's so much, I hate to use that word again because it just sounds like I'm repeating myself, which I guess to some extent I am, but world building. Obviously DC has a while to go before they catch up with Marvel, because Marvel's had a huge head start. But as a massive DC fan, a person who knows where this is going, I know that there is truly greatness to be had here. And whilst I recognize that we're not at that point, I can also go ahead and say that this movie is definitely worth your time. Again, I'm never going to claim that this movie is the best movie of all time. I'm never going to claim that this movie was even the best movie this year. But what I will say is it was a very enjoyable movie. And there are definitely character moments in there that are worth watching. And I think it's a solid start to the Justice League. If you disagreed with anything I said in this video, feel free to leave a comment down below and we can discuss it. My name is Bilbsy, and I will see you in tomorrow's video.